Okay, thanks for your patience. So welcome everybody and thank you for joining us. I am Marie Beyer, market analyst at Dataxis, in charge of the Middle East and Africa. Today's digital panel will be the occasion for us to discuss public broadcasters' positioning and their development strategies. So to talk about this subject today, I am fortunate to have with me David Makubian, General Manager TV channels at South African Broadcasting Corporation. Thanks, David, to be with us today. We have also Charles Mungai, Chief of Digital Media at Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. Thanks, Charles, to participate today.
Hello.
Hey. Thelma Oba's manager programs from the Nigerian Television Authority was supposed to be a part of the conversation, but she would not be able to make it today. It is unfortunate, but we will run the panel just the three of us today. Before starting the conversation, I will take a few minutes to introduce some preliminary slides to have a broad overview of the broadcasting markets in sub-Saharan Africa today. So in this introductory part, we will talk about English and Portuguese-speaking Africa. We also decided to include Ethiopia in the spectrum, although it's an Amharic-speaking country, because the size of the market and also the current opening of the country that will have an increasing weight in the coming years. Together, these 18 countries at stake represent almost 700 million people, 150 million households, and 7 million households that are equipped with a TV set. In 5 years, as you can see on the graph, more than half of the 180 million households of the region would have a television. It should be noted, however, that this development is not and will not be equivalent in all countries. South Africa and Ghana, for example, have higher TV penetration rates with respectively 83% and 66% of total households possessing a TV in 2019. As for Kenya and Tanzania, although they are technology advanced, since both countries have switched off their analog signal, they still lag behind in terms of equipment with respectively 44% and 30% of TV penetration in 2019. But as we can see on the graph on the left, TV households equipment is steadily growing at the scale of the region. While there is a growth in pay TV subscription, free reception still remains the majority. Not to mention that pay TV operators generally include national free channels in their bouquets. The graph on the right gives you more insight on the free-to-air reception with two trends that are noticeable. First, the predominance of satellites, and second, the remaining presence of analog. So on this subject, Africa is one of the last regions still in the process of digital migration of the terrestrial signal. So digital transmission and broadcasting has the potential to improve both the quality and the quantity of what is available on TV. It also offers opportunities to develop tools dedicated to audience metrics, for example. But such developments request heavy investment in infrastructure, in households equipment policies, and channels digitalization. Satellites, on the other hand, rely only on the offer and on the development of an attractive offer, ultimately the existence of a national orbital position. created by a satellite operator in coordination with local actors. Building on this trend, some operators blend and brand free channels in marketable bouquets with the objective to create a national and regional positioning. One can mention, for example, the South African OpenView or the West African MyTV that reached millions of households on their markets. The initiative aims at constructing an interesting free offer that will be able to attract advertisers and generate sustainable revenues. Indeed, and this is also going to be a subject that we will delve into during today's panel. Revenues from free television remain fragile. The development of advertising expenditure in the region has been slowing down and is not expected to increase drastically in the next 5 years. Without reliable measurement tools and recurrent daily metrics on audience consumption, it will be difficult for the market to grow substantially. One can notice also the impact of COVID-19 in 2020 and the economic contraction it generated. So the outcome should be felt this year and to a lesser extent in 2021, with a slow recovery from 2022 onwards. I would like also you to look at the TV public funding, and we can see that the share of government subsidies remains marginal and is not expecting to grow extensively. But generally speaking, public broadcasters continue to play a leading role in the national free-to-air ecosystem. They are also impacted by the slowing down of the advertising market, as well as by other challenges like the entry of private TV, the need to adapt digitally, and the continuous development of pay TV. But our speakers today are key players and executives from the biggest public broadcasters of the region. They are very familiar with the challenges and opportunity of the market and will be able to share their expertise and experience on the subject with us today. So David, Charles, thank you again for being with us today. To start the conversation, we would be glad to know more about your position and the public network, to know more about the public network you are working for. So maybe Charles, you can start and introduce yourself, KBC.
Hello.
Hello, Charles.
Hello, Mary. Is it clear on your end? Yes. Am I clear on that end?
Yeah.
All right. I lost you there for a bit. Do you mind repeating what's the question?
Yeah, it was to start the conversation. I think it would be interesting for the audience today to know more about KBC, its positioning, so as a public broadcaster in Kenya, and your position in within the company.
Okay. So KBC is Kenya's national street broadcaster.
Okay, so I think we lost Charles a little bit.
We have what would call TV. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we will move to David and come back to you directly afterwards. Yeah, David. So David is the general manager in SABC, so general manager TV channel in SABC. So in South Africa, the market is really also particular. So maybe you can tell us more about your position and the positioning of SABC.
Thank you, Mari, and good afternoon or good day, good morning to everyone who's online. Yes, so I'm David Makubiani, General Manager for Channels. The SABC is the current public broadcaster in South Africa. It's quite a competitive landscape. We've got a big African media player in the form of DSTV as a pay TV. And then there's also, OpenView and ETV and StarSat in the same environment. As the public broadcaster, we currently have about 5 channels, but the channels that I oversee are 3, with one that is slightly dormant. It's SABC 1, 2, and 3. And also there is a news channel that falls under the SABC, but licensed by DSTV. But as a public broadcaster, we also have 2 main divisions. We've got what we call the public broadcast service, which is PBS, and we've got public commercial service, which is PCS. So we've got one channel, and the model really initially was that the commercial arm of the SABC would be able to fund the public mandate that comes through for us to deliver. We are driven and regulated through an independent body called ICASA, Independent Communications Authority of South Africa, that has been established under Electronic Communications Act of South Africa. And under that, we have received a license. I think all broadcasters must receive a license, like in many other countries in South Africa. Our public license conditions is what guides us in terms of us delivering our mandate. We've got also the broadcast mandate that we must align to. Our core mandate is really to entertain, it's to inform, and to educate. And that's what drives us. And obviously, as a public broadcaster, what we try and do is make sure that we empower the nation and we deliver against specific quotas. For instance, we've got a specific percentage of language, local languages. We've got marginalized languages. In South Africa, we've got 11 official languages. On the 3 channels, we need to make sure that we try and accommodate all these 11 official languages. People with disability and the different representations within the country. So in general, that's who we are as a SABC. A public, service platform, and we are, unlike many public broadcasters, we are linked to the government through the Department of Communication, but really we are a public broadcaster and not a state broadcaster. So as such, our editorial is independent, and we try and pride ourselves in being an independent broadcaster without political interference, without interference in our editorial. I think I'll stop right there. I could continue. And
no, it's interesting. Actually, you are already working on my next question. So you talked about the very challenging landscape in South Africa. So yeah, it is a more and more challenging environment in broadcast, in television in general. So which path are you adopting, and what strategy in terms of organization and innovation did you build to face this growing competition and also the challenging landscape that you described and we saw during the market overview?
Yeah, I mean, so with the entrance of other players in the market, obviously there's audience fragmentation. And we start seeing that, especially around 2010 and just before 2010, when the pay TV locally opened up their target audiences and started, having packages for the lower income groups, which would ordinarily sit on a public broadcaster. And then as time goes on, there are more entrances into the market in the form of, for instance, other players like StarTimes Media. But I think what we are starting to see as a bigger impact, and we've started seeing that, I can say safely from 2016, 2017, is audiences consuming content on digital platforms. So the introduction of, OTT players, video on demand players, has also started showing us audiences growing and consuming content. And the proliferation of smartphones and the accessibility of more smartphones coming into our country also sees us and sees our audiences, especially during the day, starting to consume more content. But you find they are consuming content and also engaging on social media more via their smartphones, or whether it's been Android and Apple. So that's where we are competing. And so we need to write, and we're seeing that we need to adapt. The attitude that we have taken as SABC is more embracing the change instead of trying to fight it. So the idea is, how do we then play within the same space? And our strategy is more focused on also playing in that space, understanding our consumer consumption patterns, adapting to that, and making sure that we also play in the same environment. So if they are consuming content on their mobile phones, on tablets, and that is slowly increasing, let us make sure that our content is available on that platform. The good thing is that, and I'm anticipating that you might want to talk more about this, but the good thing is our strength really is local content. So we want to not
we will come back to that.
Yes, we don't want to lose our strategic strength, which is local content. The question is, how do we ensure that that content lives within the spaces of our audiences wherever they are?
Thanks for this introduction. I see that Charles came back on the conversation, so we are glad to have you back. Before starting to talk about content strategy, digital strategy, Charles, can you give us more information about the positioning of KBC in Kenya and the TV landscape in Kenya right now, how you are handling the challenge that we talked about before? It's up to you.
All right, thank you very much. Sorry, my connection has been a bit, if I just want to confirm that you can hear me clearly now.
Now,
can you hear
yes, me? Yes. Now I think it's going to be
all right,
fine.
Great. All right, so just to start with, Kenya Broadcasting Corporation is the state national broadcaster in Kenya. We have if we're looking at it from a brand's perspective, we're talking about 15 brands, but then we have other regional services. So this is how it's set up, is that we've got the national TV station. Those are two. One is for the youth audience. The other one is for a general audience. So for the youth audience, it's called Y254. For the general audience, it's called KBC Channel 1. That caters for a general audience. When I say general audience, I mean that it cuts across. And that is because that is where we carry both our public broadcast as well as our model is public and commercial. So is that we are required to carry a large component of information for public interest, given our mandate is to inform, educate, and entertain. So what we have is that we've got those that content that is what would be regarded as public content. So for example, we have an education program that happens on TV that has been very pivotal during this time of the COVID, because now children from home can be able to tune in to KBC at a certain time of the day and they're able to catch up on certain lessons that they would otherwise not be able to catch anywhere else. The other thing is that we have what we call a parliament. So that's also part of public broadcast. So we're able to carry that content for public broadcast. Then from there is that we've got about 12 radio brands, and then we've got other regional services. So in total, those come to about 21 radio stations. So 2 are national. One is an English service. So it's the KBC English service, which was the first radio station in Kenya. Then the other one is KBC Radio Taifa, which is purely Swahili. In Kenya, we have only 2 official languages, English and Swahili. Then from that, we've got the vernacular services. So those cater for the different, what I would call regions where certain languages are predominantly spoken. So, you know, the different tribes that we have in Kenya, there are about, you know, about 42 to 47 different tribes. So there are certain tribes that have, you know, a language that cuts across. So that sort of caters for those different regions. Then we also have the Signet, because Kenya moved now into digital TV broadcast. So KBC has another entity called Signet, whereby we now have the digital TV setup, whereby in Kenya, it's on DVB-T. So that is what we have right now. And we have also other competitors in that space, such as Pang, such as GoTV and
Yeah,
StarTimes.
network
So those are also,
operator.
yes,
For the
those are
audience,
network
it's the
operators.
network operator, yeah.
Yeah. So we have those 2 amalgamated. So there's the public broadcast and the whole TV broadcast component, and then there's the DVB-T or digital TV component. So in terms of income, so we generate income from commercials. So that is advertising. That's where we generate most of our income. Though due to the public broadcast services that we do, then we also have a certain amount of money that is paid by the government to Kenya Broadcasting Corporation to facilitate those public broadcast components. We are registered and regulated by the Communication Authority, which is under the Ministry of ICT in Kenya. And so we also have content ratio is, I mean, across the stations in Kenya, the Communication Authority that registers all media houses have put a regulation such that we have a 60-40 ratio of local to international content ratio. So where 60% of the content must be local content.
Okay.
So we're talking about a TV landscape of about over 66 TV stations and a radio landscape of over 100 radio stations. So that's what the landscape looks like. I don't know if there's anything else I've sort of left out.
No, I think it's very clear, and you give me also the opportunity to go to the second big subject, or our first big subject that we will talk, which is the content strategy. Because as historical free broadcasters, you build the knowledge of the audience, and also you to mention the very specific positioning of public broadcaster in terms of content offering. So my question is, which programs drive actually the viewers, and how do you invest on that through your offer? So maybe Charles, you can tell us directly, since you are on unmute, you can tell us more about your programming strategy. Yes, if you hear me. David, you can...
as I mentioned, in terms of programming, first is that...
No,
can you hear me?
It's good, yes.
All right. So in terms of programming, first is that there is a requirement of the 60-40 ratio. So largely our content is local content. Then from there is that when it comes to to TV, for example, TV broadcast. Because when I talk about broadcast, I'm talking about TV and radio. So when we look at the TV side, is that we try to cater for across all audiences in terms of age demographics. So we've got programming that's for the younger children. And this I'm talking about the general audience television, because on the youth TV largely caters for the youth audience. That's from an age group of, I mean, everywhere from maybe 10 or 7 all the way to about maybe 30 or 25. And then the general TV audience caters now all across all age demographics. And so in terms of content, we have content that caters for the very young children. So we're talking about the education content that we have running on our TV station, which is part of public broadcast. Then the other one is in terms of Parliament. So I'm starting with the public broadcast component. So there's education, there's Parliament, which are components of public broadcast that we have to carry along, given our mandate. Then the other thing is now when we come to the big connectors in terms of audience engagement. From our end, we have observed is sport. So we are the true sport partner in Kenya in terms of reach, in terms of engagement, because now we're really driving that from a digital point of view to drive engagement and user generated content from that end and input. Which we are also incorporating part of our programming, in terms of the input that's coming from the users or from the viewers. Then on top of that, we also have, we have the religious programs. So those have also been a very, have been significant audience drivers. Again, especially during this COVID season where people sort of couldn't go to church. And even when church has, even when the rules have been opened up a bit, still there are conditions on how many people can sit in for a church service. So you find that, when we carry those both on our linear television as well as, because we're also carrying that content on live stream. So we find that they have very high traction across both platforms.
Okay.
The other thing now is, of course, the soaps and those different things. That's on TV. On radio, we're talking about interviews, music.
We will just focus on
largely,
TV. We will just focus on TV programming. But thank you very much. I'm also curious to ask the question to David about the content. Which content is more popular or driving the audience the most in South Africa? And you are also under regulatory constraint to local content. So can you tell us more about the proportion of in-house and local content versus international program and acquisition? You are mute.
I think let me start with the last question. So we are currently sitting with about 80% of our content being local and 20% on the platform being foreign content, so the licensed content. So that's where we are. And yeah, with regards to our content, we are informed, you're quite right. What guides us first and foremost is our regulations that goes right into informing us of the number of hours that we need to be producing in performance period and in prime time, our performance period being from 5 until 11, and our prime time being 6 to 10. So for instance, we've got 7 hours that our regulations say on all 3 channels. Every channel must have 7 hours of news, of which 50% of that must be in prime time. We've got 7 hours of current affairs on the PBS, 5 hours of current affairs on the commercial platform. So even the commercial platform, as much as it's a commercial platform, we still are regulated. So we look at that. And obviously we also, the other thing that drives our decisions on what type of content we need to drive. We look at our audience research, our ARs, how are we performing, and which content is performing the best. We know, for instance, that drama in South Africa is big. So our soaps, our long-running series especially, as long as it's local drama, it tends to perform. I mean, the most watched drama or soap is a daily soap on SABC1 in the whole country, where we've hit about 11 million, the average of about 10 million viewers coming in to watch Uzalo every night. So that's the sort of, indication. Then the other genre that we have is news, especially in the indigenous languages. So our Zulu, Xhosa news, they also have a lot of audiences that come in. For instance, now with COVID, we have opened some of our slots for the president to engage with the nation, also for ministers, which is something we normally don't do unless obviously it's part of the category of content that needs to be covered. But a lot of our audiences will tune in because of the interest and because of the updates and because the president is speaking. And then sport reality programs. So the local sport, especially soccer, does very well for us. And how we do our strategy is, as we schedule, we make sure that the content is created. So for instance, we've got a significant number of hours we are expected to deliver that are educational programs or youth programs. Now, because SABC1 is a youth skewed channel, we can have that content. But for instance, we've got a drama called Skim Sam every day at 6:30, but it's youth skewed and it's education. So what we've done is we've taken a format that we know is popular with our audiences, and we are infusing educational messages, and that is an educational. So it's a way of ensuring that we still comply with our regulations and the expected hours that we deliver, but we make sure that we make it as entertaining as possible and in a language that audiences will come in and view the content. We look at that. Our strategy looks at obviously revenue. We review our content and make sure that the programming that we bring in not only does it drive audiences, but linked to that also revenue, as in terms of, for instance, some of the content like children's content strictly produced for children. It's very hard to generate revenue around it, even if it's quite popular. So then we look at other ways of ensuring that our content is commercially viable. And then the third arm is mandates that I've been talking about. It's audiences that are very important, it's revenue that's very important, and then it's delivering against our mandate. Is the program entertaining? Is it empowering, informing? Is it educational? Are we living to our true descriptor as a public broadcaster? So those are the drivers, and that's what kind of guides us in terms of selecting content, also ensuring that we review and update content. The editorial around it becomes quite important, so that we are also differentiated from the type of programming that you will find on a pay platform or an independent platform that could get away with sensationalism, right? With us, we always look at, and the irony is, it's content that works because audiences are interested in factual content, in content that relates to them. So generally, you'll find that content actually does work, and even other competitors then tune to delivering what is considered to be generally mandated content.
So actually you raised some very interesting points, the subject of revenue, but also the popularity of a program. So my question is, how do you measure success, and which type of metrics and audience measurement do you use? So I see that in the public audience question, there was already this question to Charles. So Charles, maybe you can start. In Kenya, what tools are available for you to evaluate the success of your programming and to measure audience?
So in terms of audience measurement, we have the Kenya Association Research Foundation, which we have partnered with to be able to give us audience insights. We also have organizations such as Geopol, who are constantly doing mobile measurement of audiences, so that we can be able, so when we get those two data sets, then we are able to look at where we are vis-a-vis the competition on given different time slots. Also, at the same time, what we've also done is to leverage over the top platforms that we're using when we look at, there's certain content that we live stream over YouTube, there's certain content we live stream over Facebook, as well as, the live stream on our website. So when we have all those three different data sets, then we try and put them together for us to be able to know, one, which content works across which platforms. So there's certain content that has better engagement across both. There's certain content that digital has a much better traction over linear TV. And there are those that, linear TV may have much better traction vis-a-vis the audiences who are on the digital platforms. So that is how we're able to identify what works, as well as look at what's happening on the competitors, from the competitors' side of things, and to be able to see then what's the difference in terms of programming. And slowly by slowly, we've been improving that, and that has been visible even in terms of the quality of advertisers we're able to bring on board, as well as the increased audience reach of our content, as well as the growth of our digital audiences.
Thank you very much. And in South Africa, how is it going, David? I know that there is automatic measurement already. How do you use it? Can you tell us more about your success measurement?
Yes, so I mean, primarily we are all part of using a system called TELMA, and we've got the Broadcast Research Council of South Africa that also provides and monitors performance, and I think how it helps in all of us using the same source is so that obviously the advertising industry can get to feel that it's credible research that comes out. So mostly we do monitor the performance via the system called TELMA from our side. But as with the different changes, we can now monitor usage via digital. We can monitor discussions, conversations on social media. So we use social media. What are the social media reactions on the content? We've got, we can bounce off also the interactions on our radio stations. We've got 18 radio stations with different languages. So we sometimes have that access as well. And also there's call centers. There's people who would normally, call in via the call center, the licensed call center. And sometimes those are the avenues where you can also get to engage with audiences. And obviously, there's the anecdotal research that we will do ourselves with regards to the performance. But generally, we have a system that would churn out, and we use it, and that's what I think everyone generally uses in South Africa to see where we are with regards to performance. As a public broadcaster, it's not only about revenue. We look at the impact as well, how the significance of the content. Right now in South Africa, we are battling issues like gender-based violence, inequality, in terms of the poor versus the rich and so on. There are certain empowerment, there's inequalities in terms of illiteracy, people who are uneducated. So we've got a role to play. And it's also a question of, how are we delivering against that? And our audiences coming in, and are we making a difference in society? Just trying to answer the question of,
success, yes.
The success and how we measure it.
But I noticed, so Charles and David, you mentioned for audience measurement, also the growing importance of digital engagement. So thank you for mentioning that, because it's a perfect transition to my next question that concerns the online deployment of public broadcasters offers. So my next question is, what digital strategy are you deployed so far? And how is this strategy being acknowledged by the audience in terms of usage and traffic? So maybe Charles, you can start with the strategy of KBC. The first steps has been taken. Maybe you can tell us more about that.
Sorry, Mari. Could you kindly perhaps maybe just break down that question into different segments so that I can address them one by one?
Yes. So for now, what is the roadmap of KBC in terms of digital online strategy?
All right. So in terms of digital, or what you call online strategy, is something that KBC has been very instrumental in building internal capacity. That's the first thing, is that the corporation has increased significantly in terms of their focus and investment into building internal capacity in the organization, number one. Number two is the fact that over and above building internal capacity in terms of personnel, there is also the component of putting in tools that facilitate collection of data, because at the end of the day is over and above the tools that we use to broadcast the content, whether we're talking about the live streams, which we already have, whether you're talking about content available on demand, so whether you're talking about audio or video, because when we carry this content over the top, say maybe on YouTube. So for example, you'll find that we have our news content, we have our news shows. And on these news shows, we could have, there could be those that are interview driven, or they could be those that are, reporting driven kind of news shows. So we have ensured is that number one is, for example, when you go to our YouTube channel, you will find that there is a YouTube channel that's dedicated to programming kind of content. Can you hear me? Am I clear?
Yeah, we lost you. I think 1 second. Just come back to the last sentence.
Okay, so I'm saying that what you'll find is that we've tried to separate content types on our digital platforms. So there's content, yes, available on demand, but we do identify that audiences are different. There are those audiences that are interested perhaps in following up on the next episode of a certain show. So we try to separate that kind of content from content that perhaps is on a news story. So we've tried to, segment our audiences based on how we profile them. There are those ones who are keen on, say, the news, and there are those ones who are keen on, maybe everything else apart from the news. Then over and above that is we also try to make sure that, we are available across devices. So say, for example, we had the FA Cup game running last weekend, which was the Community Shield. So we try and get rights to those kind of content, which we have observed based on the audience insights, because we have a strong audience insights capacity internally, as well as the partnership that I just mentioned. So what you try to do is based on those audience insights that we have identified have high resonation or high resonance with digital audiences, we try to acquire both digital and linear TV content rights. So for example, when we had the Community Shield game last weekend, is that we were able to get the digital audience rights such that they were only geo-locked to Kenya. So only people in Kenya can be able to view that particular, say, match on our live stream. So everybody else outside Kenya may not be able to do that because we have to protect the rights that we have been able to acquire from the different partners so that, you know, we can continuously have better relationships. The other thing is over and above, so I've talked about the content, I've talked about the personnel, I've talked about the tools that assist in transmission, as well as tools that assist in measurement, audience measurement, and you know, when we talk about, say, things like social media listening, you know, being able to harvest what are the responses or the engagements around different programs. So sometimes we have had to stop certain shows because the feedback, say maybe on digital, has been not very positive about them, as well as, you know, increased length of partnerships, say maybe with certain content producers, because the content that we are running has had very positive sentiment, because we also have to do a lot of sentiment analysis around our programming. Then over and above that is also the component of, you know, trying to generate revenue, because at the end of the day also there's the component of trying to make sure that they implement the different activities that are implemented in the corporation are sustainable. And given that, even from the data you shared with us, you know, at the beginning of this presentation, you know, advertising revenue is continuously decreasing, and that has also been observed even among our competitors. And so a lot of companies now, especially media entities, have to really rethink what has been their traditional media revenue strategy. So because we have a mandate to, you know, inform, educate, and entertain from a public component, broadcast component point of view, but we also have a commercial component because we have to be able to self-sustain. Then we have to bring those two together. So advertising is also important to us. However, the most important thing also is to be trusted, for audiences to feel that we are independent, because there has also been a perception problem, which, you know, as a brand, we are slowly and significantly stepping out of,
Yes.
Due to, you know, previous maybe engagements. And I'm sure David could relate to similar challenges. Maybe, I don't know how the South African landscape has been, but for a lot of countries across the world, a lot of public broadcasters, the biggest challenge is, you know, especially where developing democracies, then, you know, you have a challenge based on the different governments of the day. But so far so good. The government has been really strong on making sure that media as an entity is independent.
Well, yeah, we will come back to that. I would like to have David's talk, David's words also on OTT. I mean, on OTT, on online engagement of public as a public broadcaster. So I know that digitalization of content is actually a part of SABC strategy. So maybe you can sum it up to us, because we are going to be soon at the end of this webinar. So can you tell us about your online strategy, and also, as Charles mentioned, the challenge and the monetization of such content? So I'll let you speak.
Okay, thanks, Mary. From our side, one of the things that we are well aware of is that our audiences and our main source of revenue, our model being obviously generating revenue by ad sales. We still have, you know, good audiences generally, especially on our two channels, SABC 1 and 2. So our linear service is still running. Our introduction of OTT is in response to obviously the growth in digital consumption. But we are being cautious in how we are doing it. So we definitely enter in the market, and our model is one that's going to be hybrid. One of the things that we've started doing is existing platforms. So, you know, we would, for instance, we've got our on-demand content, our content being available. We have partnerships with the likes of View. So some of that content will be available. We've got plans to very soon stream our own channels so that we can have accessibility, as I said in the beginning of this discussion, reach our audiences wherever they are, whether it be on a mobile, whether it be on their tablet. They can stream our channels and not only rely on obviously their traditional TV screen. So, you know, the streaming of our platforms is important. On demand is something that we want to do. It's already something we are doing through partners. And basically that's how we would like to move forward. The third element is carriage. So you're talking about our plan in terms of commercialization. We would like to create content because we are content aggregators, and ensure that that content can be carried on other platforms, whether locally or internationally. And that is us exporting South African content. So it might be that in the diaspora or in outside of South Africa, there's interest. We have already started that, but it was a traditional distribution. So now there's room for us to be able to make available via OTT our content wherever you are beyond the borders of South Africa. So basically that's what we want. It's a hybrid model that we would like to implement. What we've started with, which is low-hanging fruit, is all the available digital platforms that we have, the likes of the YouTubes, the social media platforms like Facebook, you know, and we are currently using those as digital platforms. But over the top content, we then make a plan with regards to partnering. And some of the content that we've put out earlier this year, we had also made sure that we have streaming, and we do that when we've got the right and we've got big events like sporting events. We will then use a YouTube channel that is accessed via our platforms or our website. So that's what we are doing now to make sure that we are catering with the intention of in the next you know, year or so, owning our own OTT platform.
Thank you. So we have touched on several points today. Maybe you can give us the biggest challenge that public broadcasters will have to face in the coming years, based on your expertise and experience. It's also the occasion, because it's going to be my last question, it's the occasion for you to give us your vision on the TV broadcasting market in your country. So Charles in Kenya, Davin in South Africa. Charles, I let you start with your vision of the market and the future in Kenya. After this question, we will take some questions of the audience.
I'll begin by looking at it from all right. Can you hear me? Am I clear?
Hello? Now, yes.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, great. So in Kenya, we're looking at, so if you have to forecast, then you have to look at certain data. So for example, when we look at the penetration in terms of internet penetration in Kenya, we're talking about an over 80% internet penetration in Kenya. And so with a large bulk of this, you know, over 80% of these persons being on mobile. And so that means that the first thing that one has to look at is availability. So as a broadcaster, if you're going to remain relevant to the audiences, first is that you have to be able to deliver content on mobile. over and above the fact that you also need to be thinking about how you need to be able to deliver this content over the internet and on mobile for you to remain relevant. Number two is the fact that that means also in terms of content, you have to also look at attention spans, and you have to take a data-driven decisioning kind of approach. So then that means that if it is content that you're delivering on mobile, you need to look at engagement, which then determines the kind of engagement or contract you'll be getting into. I don't know. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Hello? Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, so that will dictate the kind of engagements you get into, because that will mean that perhaps you have to, appear as sort of maybe
Now we
and
lost you.
engage as we audiences. Hello?
Yes, now it's
Hello?
fine. Just
Sorry.
we lost you
Okay.
1 second, but now it's you reconnect. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm talking about the nature of partnerships. We'll have to probably be on an engage as we go kind of strategy, where we look at, instead of signing very long-term kind of engagements for content that have low resonance with your audiences, especially because feedback is immediate. Again, remember that, you can always tell, what's the ratings of a show, perhaps, for example, because you can see how many live audiences you had, you can see how many on-demand audiences that you have had, so that then that tells you, as well as also the user feedback. So when you put all those into a formula, then you should be able to, use data to be able to make decisions on the kind of partnerships or engagements that you'll have for content. It will also be able to determine the kind of partnerships you can go into in terms of revenue generation. So when you look at it from a futuristic point of view, is that, the nature of advertisers now, moves, if you look at the disruptors of the industry, which is mainly Facebook and Google, is that they're able to offer a model that, has no fixed timelines, is a plug and play. So we also need to start thinking long-term, into a future kind of business model of plug and play that also facilitates small players to be able to leverage our mediums to advertise, and thereby even for us to be able to make revenue off them. I think those three would be something that I think would be significant.
Thank you very much. David, in South Africa, so the challenge are very well known, in particular pay TV competition, but also the arrival of giants in digital. So what is for you the landscape that is waiting for you in the 5 next years, and how SABC is going to respond?
Yes, so I mean, the one big challenge for us is as a public broadcaster is staying commercial, commercialization, and as we mutate and then get into new platforms, OTT and so on, we need to retain our revenue, because I mean, we are public broadcaster, but the funding model is such that we are independent. So we are receiving 15% of the funds from government. The rest we need to generate the revenue ourselves. So that is the biggest challenge. Is the reality is, as much as we are given this mandates to deliver against, whether it be education, children, including sport, religion, all the mandates that we need to deliver, and we are compelled to deliver, because we are a public broadcaster, even if they are not mandated via our regulatory, are not funded. So this unfunded mandate that we have, we need to be innovative enough to have funding or business model that will make sure that we stay above the water. While we are talking about that, we then also have a dormant regulator and the regulatory environment or our regulations haven't been updated, I think, for over 10 years. So while the landscape is changing and there's an infiltration of different platforms, the likes of Netflix and so on, and they are slowly introducing local content and playing within our turf, they don't have any regulatory boundaries. It's not regulated. They don't have any mandate. And yet we are all going for the same pie, the same audiences. So that for us is a challenge. And as I said, how we've decided to take that on is to embrace it and say, how do we look at the positives within this change? What can we take from, you know, the innovations, the technology, the way in which our audiences, and how do we take our strengths, which is understanding our audiences more than any other platform would, and make sure that we are always relevant. And so we move with them and we stay ahead of the players who are trying to understand our audiences, and then deliver relevant content constantly in their local languages, to make sure that you know, advertisers, especially on a digital platform, where now we can use analytics and we can actually talk to our advertisers and say, these are the audiences that you are looking for. We've got them because we've got the product that they want to watch. You can talk to them directly. And that's one way of making sure that we continue, because I mean, our survival is through relevant content. That's the only thing that's going to bring us audiences, and audiences is what's going to bring us you know, investment and revenue and partners and so on. So basically, in terms of the future, that's you know, our plan in terms of moving forward, and that's how I see it, is that we must adapt or die.
Okay, thank you very much for your insights. It is time now to take some questions of the audience. So you can click on the Q&A icon and just write your question. Our speaker will answer to you. So there is one for you, David. Does SABC have a strategy in the short term to distribute content over 5G? From Shrabi.
I think the short answer is yes. I can't get into the details, but yes, we do have that plan in the short term. And I think there was another question that I can answer that was from Mari, was, you know, whether we're in a position on expansion, what is the SABC's position in the expansion of DTT services? So with regards to DTT, obviously that is driven primarily by government, but we on our side are also in the process of ensuring that we've got expanded plans with regards to introducing channels. We've launched an education channel on DTT, and that channel obviously was in response also to COVID. A lot of students that were forced to stay at school. So that education content is sitting on the DTT channel, and it's also sitting on our digital platforms, you know, on our website and SABC education website. So our plan is to expand on that. We are testing a sport channel on DTT currently that hasn't officially been launched. And there are other channels that we would like to put on moving forward. So the DTT platform actually is live, even though it hasn't been officially launched. and there hasn't been, obviously, government hasn't officially, announced the opening of DTT. In the background, it runs. Anyone who's got a smart television, or those people that are indigent that have already received DTT boxes, are watching the channels. Our news channel is also on DTT. So our 3 channels plus the other 3 channels are currently broadcasting on DTT.
Okay. A question for you, Charles. Since in Kenya the DTT is already implemented since years. So Philip Agar is asking, there are so many ways to reach the audience as a free-to-air broadcaster. Internet is clearly important, but if you had to choose one traditional broadcast methodology, would it be satellite or DTT? Do you see a difference actually in terms of metrics?
So in terms of Kenya, DTT would have to be the natural choice, because already it has been implemented at scale. In Kenya, we have already changed. We are already on DVB-T, so we're already on a digital channel. That would be the way to go in terms of free to air. It would be DTT.
Okay, because more households are equipped with this technology.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. All of them. I mean, all the households in Kenya that have a TV, I would say perhaps 80% of them have the devices to be able to do that. So either you have a smart TV, which is what most people, I mean, that's what is mostly running in Kenya is smart TVs, or you have the digital decoder from the different companies.
Okay. A question for David. Why is the launch of DTT delayed in South Africa, and what challenge are you facing? And Matthias Shakanyuka is also asking for any proposed date for launch.
Yeah, the reason for the DTT launch is really, it's politics, to put it briefly. So, without getting myself into trouble, but with regards to DTT, we were supposed to initially launch, and I think that was also a postponed date, in 2010. And there were issues really around the specifications when they wanted to take out the tender for boxes. And apart from that, so later on, when that was resolved, then there were other issues with regards to resources. There are various reasons, but mainly it's resources, because what needs to happen right now is government needs to identify a company that can, distribute the DTT boxes, and there aren't sufficient set-top boxes. About 500,000 set-top boxes have been distributed, because initially government had planned to subsidize a certain number of South Africans who can't afford them, and then make sure that the rest of the boxes are available. But that's where we are stuck, is that the service itself is available. As I said, the content is certainly available. You know that all the platforms have content that's available and ready for DTT. The issue is accessibility. So a lot of our South Africans do not have the set-top boxes. To compound the problem around DTT is really what is more popular in South Africa is DTH. So DTH has become, I think there are more than 50% of our audiences, our TV audiences, that already have DTH. And then, and a lot of people aspire to get DTH platform. And especially now where you've got OpenView that has come in, and they are providing free DTH access. And our channels are also on there. So a lot of the people would buy the box. That's the last thing they would buy. And then they get digital quality content. And then they will move on. So now you're going to have to try and move those people to DTT. It's almost like regressing for them. So that is a bit of a challenge. So with us, really, what we should be looking at is more how do we play on DTH and then OTT moving forward.
Thank you. So I think we are running out of time. So it was our last question. The different question will be followed to our speakers if they want to respond to you directly. But don't hesitate to send us email if you need further information. Also be aware that this presentation and this live panel will be would be available to download on dataxis.com onwards tomorrow. So thank you. I would like to thank you, Charles and David, again to have been with us and to share your experience. Thank you. For the audience, please check your emails. Thank you. Check your emails regarding the upcoming virtual webinars. And also follow us on LinkedIn to have our last news about webinars, digital panel, digital conference, but also our newsletter dedicated to Africa. I remain at your disposal by email if you have any question. And thank you again for participating. Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye. Merci.
Merci. Bye.